No, it's not the end of July. It's the end of July. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. How are you? It's the 18th of July. We are in the seventh month of the year and it has been warm. We've had a little rain, but I know that we have been blessed with some warmth. Not really sun, but some warmth. It is my pleasure to welcome you today. You know, we talk about It Is Possible Tuesdays. With God, all things are possible. With men, it's impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Welcome to It Is Possible Tuesdays with Sanya. It's the 18th of July, and I have a very special guest with me today. He has lived a great life, an interesting life, an exciting life, and I want him to share it with us this evening. You won't be disappointed. I know that you will be blessed, and I know that we'll get some nuggets of wisdom from him. I'd like to introduce my guest to you this evening. He has a Bible name, and he has another Bible name. Now, what I've yet to discover is what the middle name is. And so he's going to have to tell me what the R in his name stands for. Ladies and gentlemen, my audience, I'd like to introduce to you Pastor Davidson, Pastor John R. Davidson. Pastor, welcome. How are you?
Sister Jeffrey, it's tremendous to be with you today, this evening.
Lovely, lovely. Can you tell me what's the R in your name?
Well, my first and middle name were given to me for my grandfathers. So my
Ah,
father's father was John, and my mother's father was Raymond. And so that's how I get the John Raymond. And then, of course, Davidson, that's a Scottish name,
oh.
right from not many miles north of where you are.
Yes, yes, yes. Lovely. Now, I met you recently. You happen to have been conducting an evangelistic series at my church. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Well, it actually was very interesting how I did get to Stoke Newington, or more lovingly known as Stokey. It was Adventist World Radio was planning a huge evangelistic campaign all across the continent of Europe in many different divisions, and they had originally spoke to me about coming and helping with that, but being in the Ukraine. And of course, we all know that there's some challenges there in the Ukraine. So as time went by, they said, John, we really don't think the Ukraine is the right place to go, but we have a beautiful place for you to go right in London. And so it just I got transferred to London, and it was the Lord working, because I had such a tremendous time. You just wouldn't believe it. So that's how that happened, how I actually got to London, UK.
Lovely. And you were telling me that the 3 weeks you spent with us, you actually found it a blessing. What made it a blessing for you?
Well, I have to tell you that the atmosphere, just the culture of the Stoke Newington Church. Now, that's the only church I went to. I did visit at the conference in the Union, but Stoke Newington was the only church I was at, and the culture of that church is one of, I see it like a New Testament church, where they're reaching out to people. It was just amazing. They reached out to me. They didn't know me at all. Now I am the guest speaker, but I saw many people that they were helping different ways, and just the beautiful culture of acceptance in that church. It warmed my heart. It really gave me a boost, if you will.
Thank you very much. That is heartwarming. That is lovely to hear because sometimes we don't actually see what we do and it has on others. So thank you very much for sharing that on behalf of Stoke Newton. Thank you
Yes.
very much for saying
Well,
that. And we're happy.
Sister Jeffries, this is something that is true in the churches that we live in, if you will. We see the same thing week after week, day after day. But when somebody else comes in and they're like, "Wow, look at those people," they're reflecting the character of Jesus, and that's what when I say the culture of that church, I love it.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much. Now, Pastor, you are the pastor of Cannon Valley, Cannon City SDA and Fair Play SDA,
Well,
or
mm,
were?
I, yeah, that would be past tense.
Okay.
Proper English wouldn't be, but I were the pastor, was the pastor of Canyon City. Now, Canyon City is on the river, on the Arkansas River that runs east and west through Colorado, which many years ago was the border between Spain and France.
Wow.
So back in the 1700s and early 1800s, Spain, was down into the Mexico area and coming up from Central America into the northern, and France had most of North America. The British had a little bit on the eastern seaboard and such. So it has the name Canyon spelled Canon, but that first N has an Enye.
And then you,
So that's Spanish pronunciation of canyon.
Canyon.
So
Thank
I
you
would
very
say,
much.
oh, go ahead.
No, no, let's hear what you had to say. Sorry
So
about
that's
that.
Canyon City. The river was the border, of course. In the early 1800s, the Americans, the U.S., the very fledgling United States bought the Louisiana Purchase, they called it, from the French,
Mhm.
and that got most of the United States. And then there was a war between Mexico and the United States in the mid 1800s, and that's how the southwestern part. So that river was a huge dividing point. I lived there in Canyon City, pastored there for 4 years, along with Fairplay and Leadville, which are mountain towns. They are way up in the mountains, elevation of roughly 10,000 feet, both of those churches. So you've got to be prepared when you go there. When you live at a lower elevation, you get up there and it's sometimes difficult to breathe. So I had those churches until just before I came to the UK, and I was transferred to Denver, the Denver area, and I have two churches in the Denver area, Golden and Fort Lupton. They're about 60 miles apart, and I live about right between the two of them. So it takes me about a half an hour to get to one and a half an hour to get to the other.
Lovely. And what's your church demographics and population like?
Okay, the Golden Church has an attendance of 75 to 100, just depending on the week, and probably 200 members. And they range from there's Italians, there's Caucasian Americans, there's Hispanics. It's a wide range of demographic. The Fort Lupton Church is more in the country. It's on the very outskirts of Denver, and it's mostly just Americans, and they're older Americans.
Okay, I
Not
see.
very many of them in attendance.
Okay, okay. Now, how long have you been in ministry?
I started in ministry really in 07, 07. So I haven't been an extremely long time in the ministry. I owned a couple of businesses uh, before I got into the ministry.
And I'm going to delve a little bit more into not the pastoral side of your life, but the before you entered ministry. Now, I don't know how many people might know, but you are very much a motorcyclist. Um, and not only you, but your wife. would go on rides with you. Tell me about your love of motorcycles.
Well, that started many, many years ago when I lived in Michigan. I grew up in the little town of Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is where Andrews University is at. And my father had a motorcycle when I was just a little guy, and he would put me on the front, in front of him, as he would have the handlebars, and I would sit between him and the tank. And so I began to love motorcycles, and I got to be in upper grades in the high school, and I decided it was time to buy one for myself. And so I had one. And when I met Karen there at Andrews University, I didn't realize it at first, but came to find out that she also enjoyed riding motorcycles. And so very early on in our married life, we purchased a road bike, and we've ridden quite a lot around the United States, which is a large country, but we have traveled a lot there. And in our later years, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know, you were probably going to bring it up, but I've had cancer, which I had a tumor growing inside my head, and that has affected my balance. And I have not really been riding much over the last couple of years. I still, in the garage, if we go out to the garage, the motorcycle is still sitting in there.
Yeah.
But I have not ridden it, just a little bit, just like around the block and then back home. But it's been a joy. Even my dad, as I got older in life, my dad had a motorcycle, and even though I had children and a wife, sometimes he and I would go together on long trips. And then my daughter and son, they enjoyed riding with me. And as they got older, they bought motorcycles also. And we've ridden together as a family on 3 or 4 motorcycles to different places around the country. Now, my children are older, in their late 30s, and they don't ride as much because they do have children now of their own. So they kind of do their own family thing.
Yeah.
But motorcycling is like freedom. You just have the wind blowing on you. You just hear the hum of the motor, and down the road you go, and it's just a beautiful thing.
What do you say to the people who would say that's quite dangerous? You have no shelter like a car. You're not inside anything. What do you say to those persons?
Well, that is true. It is a little bit challenging. It can be risky. As you learn to ride, you need to learn safety. Safety is always the number one thing. I'm not worried too much about me, but I worry and look and check and watch as I'm going through specific areas like stoplights and stop signs, because I'm watching to make sure that guy is doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So it is challenging, and it is not always safe. However, you drive a little bit defensively, but a little bit offensively. Offensively is I'm looking at what's going on around me, very aware. So I don't know. I've probably driven over 100,000 miles on the motorcycle over the course of my life.
And your preferred choice of transportation?
On the motorcycle?
Or a car or a plane or a boat, ship?
Well, I do enjoy flying, but I don't enjoy flying commercially, because I feel like I'm like a sheep just being herded, I do prefer just in my motorhome. I have a small motorhome. And in fact, last week we took that motorhome to Wyoming, about 300 miles to the north of us, to the Wyoming camp meeting. And so that's the third way to go, is in the motorhome, because you have your food there, you have your bed there, everything is there. And so that's quite enjoyable in the motorhome.
Exactly. Oh, I'm going to take you back to your childhood. You spoke about your dad having a motorcycle and introducing you to motorcycles. Tell me a little bit about where you were born and your upbringing.
Well, I was actually born in a little town in Ohio, down in southeastern Ohio, and lived there. That was where our family, my grandfather is the one who came from Scotland, my dad's dad, and he settled there in southeastern Ohio, and he was a builder. And so my dad worked with him in building, but he was in his late 20s, and the Lord impressed him that he needed to go to school. And so he did that there in southeastern Ohio, and got a PhD in engineering. And not shortly after he got that degree, he was called to Andrews University. So I moved to Andrews University when I was quite young, in the third grade. And so most of my upbringing was on the campus of Andrews University. In fact, really all of my education is from there, Andrews Elementary Academy and on up through. So I couldn't have asked for a better life, Sister Jeffrey, to grow up on the campus of Andrews with many, many friends. Of course, this would have been back in the 70s. Things were a little different than they are now. Kids had a little more freedom to roam, and I would take my bicycle in the morning in the summertime, and I might not come back until in the evening. And but my parents knew that I was safe. So it was a beautiful place to grow up in the summertime. In the winter, oh my goodness, Michigan is a rough place. Cold, snow, and that's the way I thought the world was. Growing up, you don't have protection. And I didn't realize there were places like the Dominican Republic where it was beautiful all the time, or you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
So that the winters just are brutal there in Michigan. Yeah. So I look at myself as a missionary from the Badlands of Michigan. A missionary from.
Interesting. The first thing that came to my mind when you said Andrews, I thought you're a campus baby. You're campus grown, and the the upbringing for someone who grew up on campus is certainly one that opens your eyes to a world where you have a lot of friends, a lot of support growing up, and quite often the persons that you met in primary or prep or elementary are still your friends now. Do you have that sort of experience, or was it different for you? Do you still have friends that you went to elementary school with, secondary school with?
Oh, yes. Secondary. Many of my friends, actually, we went to primary school, middle school, secondary school. We went all the way through. So I was in school with them for 10 years.
Yeah.
I know that, well, most, I'm older now. Most of them have buried their parents, as I have. But I knew their parents. I would go to their house. I would eat there. Many friends like that. In fact, when I was in Canyon City, one of my friends he contacted me through Facebook Messenger, and he said, "Hey, I'm driving from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I'm coming through Colorado. I'm going to come through Canyon City. I'll be there on such and such a day." And we just went and ate lunch, and it was like we hadn't really missed a beat.
Yes, yes, yes.
It had been 10 years since I had seen him, but growing up, we were very good friends. So then you can talk about your family and things that your children are doing, and it's a connection. That's something about Adventist Christian education.
Yes, yes.
You don't ever lose that. And these are friendships that we make that, sister, they're going to last for eternity, not just this lifetime,
Yes,
but
yes,
eternity. And that's why I encourage our families at the church, if possible, put your children in our schools,
yes,
because they
yes.
build these friendships that are a different kind of friendship than those in the public school. And I'm not totally poo-pooing the public schools.
No, no, no.
That the friendships that you have at school, and then you come to church and you continue to build that. You have a focal point, which is Jesus,
Yes.
in church
Yes.
and at school, and that
Yes.
builds that camaraderie that
Yes.
at public school it's different.
It's different. And there's one school which as their motto they say they're building for eternity.
Amen.
Building for eternity. And that's just fantastic. So you're a campus baby. You studied what at Andrews?
Well, at the time, it was called graphic arts. Now,
Ah,
now, if we said graphic arts, that would be computer, but that's not what that was. Then graphic arts was printing,
yes.
or you could. It, so if you needed to print something, I have an example of something right here. If you needed to print something,
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not going to tell you that I printed any of these.
I hope
Nor,
not.
nor did I print any of these. But printing was actually when you needed to print, and where I worked at, of course, they print this. You're familiar with this. This is printed at
Yes.
the press. And so
Yes.
this is what I took in school, all aspects to do printing. And when we finished up, Karen graduated with a business degree. And so we worked together early on in our married life. We actually started a printing company and ran that for a few years, and then sold that and moved to Colorado. So that's what I did in school. And printing, I have been out of printing for a long time, 30 years. Now that I think back, it was like 93. 93 was when I had my last printing job. And man, that's 30 years ago. But I went into a print shop 10 years ago, and I looked at the stuff and I'm like, I couldn't work here. I don't know. It's all
Anything.
computerized. I couldn't even do it.
All digital. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember your first printing job?
I certainly do.
And what was
The building, we were just in Michigan just before we came to the UK. Karen's mother passed away, and so we had her funeral in Michigan. So Karen grew up in the same town right there in Bering Springs. She didn't live on campus; she lived in town, but her mother died, and so we went there and we drove around a little bit. And I drove by the little building, the very first printing company. After I was taking some classes, the chairman, I guess, of the department, he said, you need to have some real life experience in printing. And he found me the job, if you will. And I went and talked to the man. I knew his brother, but I didn't know him. And he was not as nice as his brother. But he was a good boss. I mean, he was fair. He told you what needed to be done. He expected you to do it. He wanted quality. And that was good to get that at the very beginning. That in school, you're not working for anybody. So it was good to go to work for somebody, and he demanded quality, demanded that you be there on time. And that was good for me as a young person to make those demands. I mean, today maybe people might feel like they were being abused. I don't know, but he was not abusive. He was just demanding. I want this.
Yeah. High standards.
I learned many good things from him. It's amazing. That little building is still there. There's something else in there. But then that was a position then that would leapfrog me to actually work for Andrews University at their print shop called University Printers. And I worked there for a number of years and continued to learn. But that first place, I will never forget that first place. That man, I'm not going to tell you his name because I've said some pretty, he was a good man. He was honest. I would never say anything that he was not an honest person or a good
Yes,
businessman.
yes.
Um, However, I thank you for that. That's something that is has good memories for me.
Yes. Now, you went into your own business, but eventually you ended that business. Do you remember the last printing job that you had to do in that company that you and Karen owned?
Well, it's possible. I have in my mind that we printed a flyer for Karen's brother. He was he was a builder, he was a contractor, but also he did some things on the side, and he made these little butterflies. Well, when I say little, they were he had a package that you could buy that had three butterflies made out of wood, and they were painted different colors and things.
Colored. Okay.
And so I printed a four-color flyer, uh, and I think that that was the last. That was a challenge because we didn't have a four-color press. We had
Ah,
we had a two-color press, which means you have to lay down two colors and then wash the ink out and put in the next two colors and run it back through. And so four color, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but like a magazine or something like this is in four color. The four
okay.
colors: black, cyan, magenta, and yellow. So when you look at a magazine that has pictures in it, there's only four colors that make up those pictures.
Wow. Thank you for that. I've had a quite interesting education just talking to you. Got a little history, got a little geography, getting a little graphic printing in here now. Thank you. We're learning quite a lot. Now, Patsy, you said that you had quite a number of businesses. So you studied graphics, went into printing, had your own business, but you also had a trucking company. Tell me about that.
Well, that's true. Um, when when we sold the printing company, we moved to Colorado, and I went back into printing, but I didn't start. I just started working for a large company. It was actually the oldest company in Denver. Now, keep in mind, the United States is a young country in comparison to the UK. And
Yeah.
so in the Western United States, there was a printing company that started in Denver in roughly 1875, I think is what I want to say. So that's pretty old for Colorado. That's not old for the UK, I understand, but there was not much in Denver in 1875. But this company had continued to prosper, and I went to work for them and was a supervisor with them for some years. Now, I realized as my children were getting older to be able to send them to secondary school and on to college was going to be a challenge. Working for somebody else, making so many pounds per hour, so many dollars per hour, you're kind of limited. You might get a little overtime, but a little overtime might mean an extra 50 pounds for the week or 100 pounds. But it's not going to be enough to send somebody to college. So we began looking at some things, and so I had no experience in trucking, but we decided to go ahead and start a trucking company. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
You're a risk taker, and that's good.
So it was a very specialized trucking company. If any of the viewers have ever been to the United States, when you get out onto the highways, there's big trucks running all the time, big trucks. And so that's not very specialized. All of that needs to be done. Whatever they're carrying, whatever they're hauling needs to be hauled. But a lot of people are doing it. And so there's a lot of competition, which lowers the price. So we looked for something that was
Niche.
not highly competitive and something where you would get in the English language, do we say niche? A niche?
Niche. Yes, yes, niche.
Mhm. So that's what we look for. We found it by the grace of God. It's just absolutely amazing, Sonia. It's the Lord found that for us and blessed us in it, and so we did that roughly from 95 Well, we had the 95 to 5 to about 50, about 20 years. About 20 years.
Um, you've would you be able to elaborate on what this niche market was? Was it refrigerated lorries or something more specialized or?
Well, it's interesting because I was looking around in the UK to see if they had any of this stuff that we haul, and
Yes.
see some of it, but the others I didn't really see because they use a different brand. So you see the shipping containers that come in on the ships, and
Yes.
so we hauled those around, and that takes a special little trailer because you got to be able to pull that up onto the trailer and then push
Yeah.
it off the trailer. So that's part of it. I noticed in the UK that they take those shipping containers and modify them to be an office. So they'll have a
Yes.
window and a door, a couple of windows, and they'll put a aircon unit on it so that they can have heat and aircon. And they use that as an office on a construction site.
Yes.
Well, here in the US, the niche was really more the office trailer. So if any of your viewers have ever been to the US and they've seen a mobile home, and I didn't see mobile homes in the UK.
But I think the version that we have would be caravans, I think. I'm
Okay.
not quite sure. Maybe, yeah. And people
Well,
tend to go to caravan parks and so things like
yeah.
that.
Okay. So that's what I have. I call it a motor home, but it's a caravan.
Yes,
It has
yes.
its own wheels and its own motor. But a mobile home actually is built in a factory and it's hauled with a truck to a mobile home park, like a caravan park.
Caravan park, yes,
However,
yes.
mobile homes are like permanent. So they bring them in there, they hook up water and electric and natural gas, and then they skirt it, and that's where people live. Now, we didn't haul mobile homes, we did a little bit, but we hauled office trailers, but they
Yes.
look just like mobile homes. And so we would pick them up at a leasing company that would lease them to a construction company, and we would haul it from the yard to the construction site. So they're going to build a new Walmart.
Yes.
I think you guys have Walmarts, don't you?
I'm
No,
not sure. I'm sure somebody will tell me in the
but
chat.
you know what I'm saying. They're going to
Yes,
build
yes,
something, and so
yes.
these are big. So Sonia, they're big. They're 12 feet wide, 60 feet long, and so not everybody can haul them because they haul like
Yes.
a mobile home. They don't haul like a refrigerated unit or something like that. So there was the niche. And
Okay.
at one point, we had 19 trucks. That was the most that we ever had. And the Lord blessed us, and it was a joy and a privilege. However, as at the end of that time, I began in the ministry, and I began to do more in the ministry and less in the trucking company. And Karen was doing more in the trucking company, and I was doing less until finally we sold it.
Okay. And I'm happy you brought that up because I was just gonna ask you, how were you called into ministry? And how did you know that you were called?
Well, I'll tell you very briefly what happened. It was actually in the fall of '06. The church that I attended was having an evangelistic series very similar to almost exactly like what I did at Stoke Newington. I was given a job. I asked, "Can I help with this?" At the time, I was the head deacon of that church. And so they said, "Yeah, we have a job for you. We're going to do these meetings. We're going to start these meetings in this park area that has a big building, and we need somebody to be security in the parking lot. So we're going to make you in charge of security and get a couple other guys to help you. So you walk amongst the cars all during the meeting, make sure nobody's doing anything they shouldn't do." So they were at that building for about 10 days, and then they moved to the church. When they moved to the church, they didn't need me or any security because now you're parking at the church.
That's it.
And so then I was allowed to sit in the meetings and listen. And I'd been an Adventist all my life. I'd been in these meetings before, but it was during that meeting that I felt impressed, and it had to be the Holy Spirit. And I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, I could do more than I'm doing. And so I just said, I'm willing to do more. That's all I said, Sonia. That was it. And I finished those meetings up. And the man who did the meetings, I'm still friends with him. He actually was from Amazing Facts. He's
Ah,
not at Amazing Facts anymore. He's a missionary in Papua New Guinea right now, he and his family. So that's the beginning. And just very quickly, it wasn't long, and one of the church elders asked me to help him with a special program. And I said, hey, I'm happy to help you out. I just don't want to speak. I'm not really an upfront type of a person. And he said, don't worry about it. I just need you to be there to support me. And that lasted about a month until he said, I've got to be away. And so I need you to speak. And so there you go. I got tricked into it, kind of. And so it just, Sister Jeffrey, it just year after year ministering, doing different things. The ministry just continued to grow, doing different things. I don't know how much you really want me to tell about that. Uh,
you can tell as much as you want to. The floor is open. The floor is
well,
open.
that church that I was at, I was helping in that program. And let's see. The church decided it wanted to plant a church. Now, my understanding is Stokey is a church plant from
And
Colorado.
I don't want to give the wrong history, so I'm going to allow my audience to type it in the chat so that I can see. I don't remember if Stokey is the mother or Stokey is the daughter. I think there's always some controversy.
Okay. Well, anyway, church planting is a good thing when you have
Yeah.
an area that you're like, we need to have another church in this area.
Yes. Yes.
They were going to have a church plant, and I said, Karen and I want to be involved in that church plant. And so we were there were about 10 of us. It wasn't a big plant. It wasn't big, but the church has grown over the years. It's still going. There's like 50 members now. So it's been growing over the years. I didn't
Yes.
have much opportunity to stay there. As when we actually did an evangelistic effort and then started the plant, I started doing Bible studies and things like this, trying to bring people into the church, and we did do that. Then I decided to go back to school to get a little more education on how to do these things better. And so when I got back, I wanted to do things better to help my little church.
Yes.
When I got
Yes.
back, I never got an opportunity to do that because the conference picked me up then right away and said, hey, we need you to go and help us out here. And so then that was the beginning. That would have been in 11. So for about 4 years, I was just helping at the church, doing more and more and more and more and more. And then I said, I got to get some more education to really help me with this. And so then the pastoral work, in essence, started there in 11.
So the Lord opened the doors for you. He created the opportunities for you, and you were willing, and you did what He called you to do. I'm going to go a little left or a little right, but not on that topic. You and Karen lived in the same place. You went to the same school. How early on in your life did you meet each other and become a couple, start your family?
Well, Karen and I grew up in the same town, but she went to the village Seventh-day Adventist school, and I went to the school that was on the campus. So there were
Uh-huh.
actually two schools there. And then when she got to high school age, secondary school, she didn't come to the secondary school at Andrews. She went to the public school.
Mhm.
So at that age, I still had never met her, and I didn't meet her during college age because we didn't study the same topics, same subjects. And so I didn't actually meet her until she came to the printing company there on the campus of Andrews University, the university printers. She came there to look at a job that was being printed, and I was the one who was actually printing it. So that was the day that we met. That was on a Thursday. I met her on Friday. We talked a little while on Friday, and then we went to church together on Sabbath. I proposed to her, and we got married on Sunday. I'm kidding.
It's lovely.
I'm kidding
You
you.
got me. You
Uh,
got me.
Now, when we met, we saw each other. Once we met, then I saw her, on campus a little bit, and we, but we didn't really converse for really several months, and then we kind of finally got together. And when we first met, she was seeing somebody else, and I was seeing somebody else, and so it took a few months. And when we actually were at an event together, and I ran into her, come to find out she wasn't seeing that individual anymore, and neither was I seeing that individual. And so we just started a relationship, and in a while we got married. And
Lovely.
that was 41 years ago.
Wonderful. Congratulations, and may the love continue to blossom, and may your family and life just continue to grow and progress, I think quite we were able to see the love between you both, and the chemistry and the bond between you both when you did your presentation and when Karen did her presentation. And from your family, you mentioned a son and a daughter. Tell us a little bit about your children and grandchildren.
Well, our daughter is the oldest. Um, she's probably to the age now where I shouldn't say how old she is, but you can guess close because of how long we've been married. And she's about 2 years older than our son. And they get along fine. They didn't, as children, get along so well, but they get along fine now. And they each have 3 children. They each have 2 boys and a girl. And they'll get together. They don't live too far apart. Currently, now I live about right between the two of them. So one lives to the south about 40 minutes, and one lives to the north about 40 minutes. And so, brother and sister, they'll get together with the families on a regular basis and do things. And so they keep in good contact. And in fact, this last week when we took the motor home, or you used
Yes.
a different word,
Caravan.
caravan, okay, and we took the 2 oldest from both families, the 2 oldest children, and took them to camp meeting. And we've done that for several years with those 4. And now,
Okay.
you see, they're building friendships even at camp meeting.
Yes,
Those things, we
yes,
want to build those friendships that have a focal point. And do you remember what
yes.
that focal point is?
Jesus,
It's Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah,
Right.
yes,
We
yes.
build those relations. It doesn't mean we don't try to bring in other friends, but
No,
we
no,
bring
no.
other friends in to show them the focal point that we have
Yes,
in our life.
yes,
That's what
yes,
we do.
yes.
So
Oh,
they
awesome.
each have 3 children, and my daughter and her husband are the ones who actually bought the trucking company from us. And they've expanded it and done other things to it, which is good. Um,
Yeah. Keeping it in the family. Lovely. Now, um, God has worked through your life from very early. Your granddad came over from Scotland. You were born in Ohio, and God opened doors for you to the point where you're now in ministry. but your life has not been share
Okay,
one
you
of the
hold on a second. You froze up for just a second, so can just start that question again.
oh, sorry about. I was saying that you have had the Lord open doors for you, but you've also had challenges. Could you share one of your challenges or a few of your challenges and the place you are now at as it relates to the challenge?
Well, one of the challenge, probably the toughest challenge that I have had is with my health.
Mm.
Um, it was a couple of years ago that I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, small cell, and I knew, Sister Jeffrey, I knew something wasn't right, and I just thought that I was getting old. And so for several months, I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and I did not know what was happening. And I went to help my Karen's little sister. They were moving, and so we went to help them pack up. Took a little vacation time, and when we got there, I told him, I said, I can't do it. I'm not strong enough to do anything. And I didn't know what was going on, but it was just a couple of months after that that I basically collapsed at church after preaching a sermon, went out into the foyer to greet the people as they left, and down I went. And that was a challenge because all my life I've really been very healthy. Not that I haven't broke a bone, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
done something like that, but this is something that you can't just like a broken bone, you put it in a cast, and in a few weeks you take the cast off and away you go. This is something that now you're laying flat on your back in a hospital bed, and this is the first time it's happened, but I know many people that I've ministered with and to that have been in that position. They ask the question, the pastor, why me? They do, don't they? They ask that question. And so the question came to my mind, and it the Lord really revealed to me that, listen, John, no matter where you are, no matter what the condition, think about the Apostle Paul. He's in
Yes.
prison, he's confined, and yet without him being in confinement is where he writes most of this that he gives to us.
Yes. Yes.
So it should not be, we should not look at it. I would encourage people, and it's helped me as I've been talking to other people who are in a position of life and death. Don't look at it as, being mad at God. Look at it as thankful to God that you have an opportunity to minister in a place that you would never have been able to do it. Like me, I would never been able to get on that floor of that hospital to minister to those nurses, male or female, if I had not been sick.
Yes.
Let's look at it that way. And Sonia, really, if we have put, let me try and get my hands here. You see,
Yes. Yes.
this is God's hands.
Yes.
My life is your life in God's hands.
His hands. Yes.
And I've got to be very, very serious. Live or die. Was Paul in the hands of Jesus? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
This
Yes.
life, we have 70 years, 80 years, maybe 90, 100 if you're, but in Jesus, we have eternity. We have a few
Yes.
moments, to God, a year is 1,000 years, 1,000. God blinks his eyes and it's 1,000 years. For him, it's no big deal. For me to be in his hands, to have him holding me, I'm comfortable wherever I am. And I am doesn't mean that Karen doesn't shed a tear. And I'm not saying that I didn't, I look at my grandkids and I'm like, man, I don't know. Do I have a year? Do I have 2 years? What do I have? I'm going to do what I can do in the time that I have. But I'm going to tell you a very short, but very interesting story. In the US, normally the nurses, you don't have, now I was on that floor for 5 days. before they finally let me go home. All the testing they were doing, testing, and they did some surgery. You can see that scar right there. I had a lymph node that was swollen severely, and they wanted to take that lymph node out. So many tests, surgery, but never do you have the same nurse. I mean, every day and every night, it's a new nurse, but not so. I had the same nurse every night, the same nurse. And so the first night I said, I know at the nurse's station, you have little packets of ice cream in the freezer there. Could you bring me one of those? And she said, no, we don't have any ice cream, but we have some pudding. And so she brought me a little pudding and a spoon. See, I'm working. I'm always working. So the next day, there she is. She wouldn't talk on the first day, wouldn't talk. On the second day, second night, she's there. And so I said, hey, good to see you again. Could I get some more of that pudding? She said, yeah, I'll be right back. I said, no. Bring me 2 of them tonight and bring 2 spoons. And so she came back with 2 puddings and 2 spoons, and she ate a pudding with me. And we just talked a little bit about life. The next night she came again with pudding, and we talked again. She told me all about her life, her growing up, her family, her husband, her children. And I got to tell you, Sonia, that does not happen. Nurses do not reveal personal information.
Yes.
Well, the next night she didn't come in. And I don't know what was going on, but she was on the floor. And I was up reading on my phone, as many of us do on our phones.
Yes.
Have the Spirit of Prophecy, and I was reading the Desire of Ages. And it was late. It was like midnight. And in she comes. And she says, Mr. Davidson, it's very, very late. You need to get to sleep. And I said, I know, I just can't sleep. I've been reading here, and I can't fall asleep. She said, well, I don't know. I said, I've got an idea. What if you were to read to me? I'll bet I would fall asleep. And she said, well, I can do that for a little while. And so she took my phone, and I said, if I fall asleep, there's my charger over there on the wall. You just plug in and turn it off, and I'll be good. So she begins to read from the Desire of Ages, Jesus on the cross. And she's reads about 5 minutes, and she's like, what book is this? I said, well, it's called the Desire of Ages. It's the best story you could ever read about Jesus. And she said, where can I get this book? I said, well, you can get it right on your phone. And so right then and there, we downloaded the Ellen White app on her phone. And so I showed her where the Desire of Ages was, and I said, you're going to want to read that. You're going to want to read that. I said, any of these books are good, but start with that one. So she put her phone back in her pocket. She started to read to me, and I don't even remember if it was a minute or 2, and I was out like a light. Woke up in the morning, there was my phone over there on the wall, plugged in, all good to go. And I never saw that lady again. She didn't come back ever a night again. And so the Lord, I got to tell you, Sister Jeffrey,
Yes.
the Lord leads us to places.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're on your deathbed. We can always reveal to somebody who Jesus is and what they've done in our life. You see, nobody can dispute what has happened in my life. It's happened to me.
Exactly.
And so that has been a challenge. It is still a challenge. I have challenges that even when I was over in the UK, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Because this cancer has gone from the lymph nodes into my bone marrow, into my blood, and it's in my spinal fluid. I have some challenges. There's no doubt. But what I'm for sure of is that I'm not going to let this disease define me.
Yes.
The focal point in my life
Always Jesus.
is Jesus. That's where I need to focus. Okay, I got a problem. I don't feel so good. No, I feel good today. But what I'm saying is some days I wake up, I don't feel so good. I just do what I can. Praise the Lord that I never really had one of those episodes when I was over there at Stokey. Every day I felt good. I felt good. And the Lord was blessing me. However, there are days, sister, I wake up and all I can do is I come into my office and I sit down and I just read because I just don't have the energy. And so I'm gonna persevere as long as the Lord puts breath in that mouth. I'm gonna persevere.
And
And
and he will continue because he's not finished with you yet. And you're still on the you still have a job to do. You still have a work to do. And he's still working in you. He's
yeah,
still working in you.
I told him, Father, I need to get back to Stoke Newington for another visit.
Yes.
Then
Yes, yes. And we are looking forward to seeing you and to having you with us. Somebody just said, Pastor, you planted the seed. And they also said, Denise said, Amen. God's grace is keeping you.
is that the
So,
Denise that I know?
yes, that's a Denise. That's your Denise.
That beautiful lady? Yes.
Yes, that's
We
and
went, I know where she lives, and we went out to eat together one time, Karen and I.
yeah,
Went to a beautiful restaurant.
yeah, yeah. As it relates to Holloway, um, it was Holloway didn't plant Stoke. He came from Kathy, but some members came out of Holloway to join us.
Okay.
So, so everybody who's speaking is from Stokey. Jennifer McKenzie said, you planted the seed. Denise said, Amen. God's grace is keeping you. And yes, it's me. Hi. but Pastor, your story, especially that one where you were in the hospital, is quite inspirational because it's telling us that wherever we are, God can use us. We just need to make ourselves available and we just need to be willing. Um, we don't have to see bad situations as bad situations. There are opportunities for God to work through us. So thank you very much for reminding us of
Okay.
that.
Sister, that's biblical. I believe that's biblical. I think of Jesus. I'm gonna give you a couple of examples, maybe three. Jesus, when he's in the in the room being interviewed, in bonds, possibly having been whipped, and that centurion is right there watching. He's the one who's in charge of the whipping, right in Pilate's chamber. And that centurion is the one who is responsible to take Jesus out there to the hill. He's responsible for putting nails in his hands. But when it's all over, sister, what does that centurion say? Certainly, this was the Son of God. While he's on the cross, while he's in that pain, while he knows his time is short, he talks to the thief on both sides of him. One accepts him. What about when he leaves Pilate's chamber and he's given that cross that's too heavy for him to carry? And meets somebody on that road that I've walked on, that road that Jesus walked on, the Via della Rosa.
Rosa.
On that road. And there, who was that man? There was a man, Simon from
Cyrene. Yes.
Something about Jesus changed his heart. And he showed compassion. The Bible reveals to us he showed compassion to Jesus, and that's why they grabbed him and said, hey, you carry it then. So even in the tough, this is why I say it's biblical, even though it's tough for us. Jesus, our example, he's working with people, even in the most dire time.
Yes.
And
yes.
I would encourage that, and it's not it's not possible to do it on our own. But if Jesus is living in our heart, every day we got to ask him, come in today. Come in today. Come in today.
Winning souls to the very end, Jennifer says. Come in today, come in always, come into my heart, Lord Jesus. Our daily prayer should
Amen.
be.
Yeah.
Our daily prayer should be. He's got the whole world in his hands, and my life, your life,
That's right.
our lives.
It's our choice.
Yes.
Sister, is whose choice is it? It's our choice, isn't it?
That's yes, 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 yes. And what are what other choice do we have? What other option do we have? Best choice, to put our hands in Jesus's our life in Jesus's hands.
Yes.
Yes.
So true.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. You you've taken us on a journey and we have enjoyed the journey.
Well, it's been a
Dear
pleasure.
Pastor. Oh, it's it's as if you're back with us in Stokey. Thank you ever so much. We are all looking forward to your return, where we will be able to sit and chat and listen to you some more, and be blessed by your life and your ministry. And we are here for a purpose, and our purpose is to ensure that others meet Jesus. And we are happy that we have met you, as you are allowing Jesus to use you so that others can meet him. We
You know, there's
are so
to point out what you're saying there. There's two things. There's only two things that we take to heaven. Do you know what those are?
uh, tell us.
Well, you've heard it many times. Number one is our
Yeah,
character.
the character,
We take our
yes,
character to heaven. But number two, like you mentioned, pointing others to
for,
Jesus,
for
we only
Jesus.
take our converts and our character. That's all that we're going to take to heaven. And so Jesus gives us the opportunity to co-labor with him. How about
Yes,
that? That's
yes, yes,
absolutely amazing
yes,
that he
yes.
allows you and I, sinful human beings, to talk in his stead.
Awesome, awesome. That's a privilege, when people are given the opportunity to work with some large industrialists and fashion designers, they're really excited. But we have been given an awesome with the King of Kings, the Savior of the world. Nothing beats that.
Yes.
Nothing. And the thing is, he uses us with what he has provided us with, whatever talent or gift, whatever it is that we do well. That's what he expects us to use to lead others to the relationship that we have with him.
That's so
That's a
true.
privilege.
Keep in mind, you may have a talent that you don't know you have. And so I wasn't ever expecting to be where I am right now. I just said, I'm
I'm
willing
willing.
to do more. And he
Yes.
just continued. As long as you have that willingness in your heart, then
Yes.
God can use us.
Yes. Song says, I am willing, Lord, to be just exactly what you want me to be.
There,
I am willing.
there is a song of that there that you started that song. That's correct. Yeah.
God is good. Oh, Pastor, it has been lovely. It has been lovely. Please give our greetings to Karen as well. We enjoyed as much as we enjoyed yours, and we learned so much. And I still hear people talking about the ginger. I'm going to use some ginger. So they're still using the advice that she has given them. Thank you very much for sharing with us, your own journey with the Lord, the fact that you've put your life in his hands and that you have allowed him to work through you and to make your challenges not challenges, but opportunities to bring glory to him. Thank you very much. And Jennifer says, thank you, Pastor. And I'm sure there are others who are grateful that they've heard from you this evening, a special evening in July where you have shared with us. You have come into our homes, and once again, you have come into our hearts. Thank you very much, and do have a very wonderful rest of the evening. It's still daylight here, but it's still late. It's 8 o'clock. And thank you, Pastor. I am so happy that I got the opportunity to talk with you and for you to share with us. Um, Denise says thank you and good to see you again.
Well, Denise, I can't
We
see
are
you, but
very
I do. I have your face is in my mind. I will never forget the people
thank you, Pastor.
Each of those, as I close my eyes, I can see people who I've
Yes.
interacted with, and I don't want to start naming names because then I'll miss some.
You'll get yes.
But I see those faces, and
Yes.
I see a culture of church that I want to emulate.
Oh,
That's
lovely.
what I want
Thank
to
you.
emulate.
Thank you, Pastor. Um, uh, Jonette is saying, sending you love, Pastor. So Jonette is on as well. And I'm sure Donna is on the comms team. I'm sure they're all on. And I'll see the messages popping on. Stephen Smith says, wow, impressed with your story. Denise says, I bet you miss the raps.
I do miss those raps. So when I come back, um, Lolo, no,
Yeah, it is Lolo
is
or
it Lolo?
Wilma.
Okay, she took care of. Now here I'm bringing up a name, and I shouldn't do that because I'm gonna forget others. But Lolo,
Is
she
that?
always took care of me on the food. Lolo always made sure that I had food. So I thank her for that. I got to quit the names because I'm going to leave somebody out, and that's
You're going to leave somebody out, but that's right. Pastor, on behalf of everybody, I say thank you. I know that they're all smiling. It's Wilma, Wilma, not Lola. I'm sure it's Wilma. Yes, who took care of you in terms of the food. But every Tuesday, not every Tuesday, once per month, we have It Is Possible Tuesday, and we share the stories of many people. This evening, we were blessed by the story of the life of Pastor John Davidson, John Raymond Davidson. I know you have been blessed. I know that his stories inspired you and blessed you and have spurred you to think about the opportunities that are presented to you as challenges and how you're going to make them into possibilities. We're talking about It Is Possible Tuesdays. It says if you're alive, then you can do anything.
Amen.
You are a doer. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with me on tonight's program. It Is Possible Tuesday with Sanya and with our special guest, Pastor Davidson. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you in 2 weeks' time. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been lovely having you here.
Jesus, all things are possible. I can mount on wings like eagles and soar.